Hi, I'm Mina Malik Hussain and you're watching The Coffee Table, and today, as always, but this is an extra special, interesting show because we're talking about filmmaking, which is, I think, such an exciting new arena of creativity here in Pakistan, and I'm very interested in it. And I also have two wonderful people on set with me today. One is a rising star, one is an established star. It's a great combination. This is going to be very fun. So we are welcoming back our old friend of the coffee table, Jamal Rehman, who is a music producer, but now full-time filmmaker, and the wonderful Sarmad Khoosat, who I think needs no introduction, but I will still say to the audience that he is an actor, a screenwriter, a producer, and also teaches film. So yay! Hello, welcome to the show. Very excited.
Yes. How are you?
Like, as you can tell, very excited.
Colorful.
Indeed, yes, a sort of, Malang special just for this show.
Yeah, that seems to be
it seems to be a theme.
an accidental theme.
Yeah,
I didn't get the memo.
Yeah, no.
Jamal, you're wearing a kada.
That should do it.
That should do
We shine it up a little bit.
Fit in now.
Artistic temperaments all around here. So, I've said filmmaking as a sort of general thing, but I think I want to sort of begin at the beginning. So, Sarmad, you are somebody who has who sort of approached screen from all directions. So you have directed things, you've written things, you've, made things. Do you feel like obviously progress has been made. So sort of, how do you feel about this direction that we're going in? So where did we begin? It was quite basic when we began in the beginning.
No, I think this is the kind of punishment you get when you don't go to school, right? And then you're made to do everything. So it was fun, but again, just working on ground and at the job there's some pluses to it, but not all of them are like good experiences, because then you do waste time in just toying around with things and figuring out what your strength is. I started off with writing.
Yeah.
And no training, nothing. I mean, just the sort of exposure to things, films and TV, and just a little bit of reading and all of that. But when I look back at it now, of course, I mean, it's flawed to the core. And,
But it was still revolutionary to do it even then, like Shashlik, for example, that people have been on the, off the stage, everyone is just like, oh my God, it was so amazing.
See,
people remember it. And it was really different and unusual, and things like that weren't happening that way.
But we also tend to just remember all things that we have nostalgia for, irrespective of their objective worth. Sometimes I feel, this obsession with, for example, they'll say, oh no, drama back then. Of course, drama was great, back in the PTV days, but not all of it. Like, sometimes I get very annoyed by that, there were so many things which were so under-evolved too. And now, I mean, say, for example, production standards-wise, we do see that things have moved sort of in the right direction. We have suffered in other areas. But, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I just started with just trying to explore writing and then acting, because I think deep inside I really wanted to become a star only.
Why shouldn't you?
So then direction, I think I understood on job that, where the real power and the real magic was. That was like, being able to direct or make something, So again, and that's how it happened. I was a fan of television stuff, but again, for nostalgic reasons mostly, not because I understood the craft or loved it as much. I loved cinema.
Yep.
I remember, and most of the cinema, I think, growing up here in Pakistan and in Lahore, I remember most of the cinema was on your Pulse Global.
Oh, yes, the Pulse Global.
Oh.
And then the pirated DVDs, and so that's most of
we've
this.
always had that, I think that we've always had a taste for this, and I wouldn't say forbidden, but just kind of limited, because there just weren't that many options back in like the 80s or the 90s.
Yeah.
So you just kind of had to take that route. But it's interesting because a lot of your experience was sort of learning by doing.
Yeah.
But Jamal, you went to film school. So you sort of took the structured approach to it.
Well, I was, having worked as a music producer pretty much all my life, but professionally for 10 years. It's like, अच्छा, अगर मैं film में जा रहा हूँ, तो if I'm going into film, then I need to get a grasp on the process and demystify the techniques and so on, and also to find if I actually have the ability to do all of the stuff that's required.
A very good point, actually, because just because you want to do it doesn't mean you have an aptitude
Doesn't mean you're able,
for
absolutely.
it. So how did you sort of go from music to film, which is in a way like to a layperson, like you're going from ears to eyes?
Well, you know, it's unfortunate, and I was speaking to another friend of mine about this. Our curriculum in school doesn't really allow for, at least in my time, didn't allow for the exploration of all of these extracurricular art forms. So for me, it's always been an interest, always been a passion. I've loved film since I was a kid. I remember my cousins used to go abroad, and then I'd get them to tape shows and bring them back, and then we'd watch those, you know.
Ooh, that was such a good idea.
That was a real thing. End of the summer, they'd like bring a stack of tapes.
You could program your VCR back in the day to like do that.
Yeah. So I mean, the passion has always been there. My parents are huge fans of television and cinema as well. So there's a sort of cultivation there. But again, having never ventured into the process itself, I needed to understand it before jumping in, and also understand my ability within that. So that's kind of why film school, I think, was crucial for me.
And actually, well, you have seemed to discover an aptitude for it, because your short film, Elizabeth, has won Best Indie Filmmaker at Top Shorts Film Festival.
You know, I can't for the life of me shake this indie title.
Indie!
I've always somehow been labeled indie.
Apparently it means if you have a small budget, then you're an indie filmmaker.
Yeah, independent essentially, but yes.
The term, like in the mainstream, or in the industry as they call it, they also say, you're very parallel. I was like, that doesn't even sound correct. Like as a very parallel.
Yeah, like how?
Cinema sounds cooler than indie cinema.
But also so passé. Like
Is it?
parallel is so 80s. Like, you know, whenever they made like, as they used to call them, social dramas, or like, you know, the dry films.
Also art
Intellectual.
Art film.
Art
we
film.
get it.
Art film.
Yeah.
But art film is great. Like, noir, you know,
Yeah.
you're like, I am a Berg, but yes.
But then it also
Noir.
just, you know, somehow makes all the other stuff non-art, I'm guessing. Because that's not art.
It's commercial.
Kind of binary, isn't it?
No, but I think that's really interesting, because here in this part of the world, there is a tendency for, and again, it's fairly complex. I'm going to arrive at it in a complex way. Is that I think that a lot of our visual narrative making was very documentary based initially, and this sort of idea, you know, of showing the reality and to highlight the issues, you know, that sort of social awareness progress thing. And now, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I am not a filmmaker, I feel like we're moving towards a more artistic narration, storytelling kind of situation. Do you think that's correct? Do you agree or not? 10 points.
Yes and no. Because I feel that here we've mastered melodrama, and that's always been the most popular kind of storytelling. Like back in the PTV days, for example, the scripts were like dense and dramatic, but mostly melodramatic.
Yeah.
The style of acting always was like, you know, a little theatrical, or
Yes.
a little sort of larger than that. But great. I mean, I'm not like a non-fan, but
No, but that was just the method.
yeah. And with this whole the new cable TV thing, where the private TV channels, I think they've just been doing melodrama, and I think every time I see a social issue like that, I haven't seen anything which has been intelligently or like
Or nuanced.
Yeah.
you know, it's like, okay, now we're going to talk about, like, I have done a lot of TV, and they would say, oh, we're making a play on rape, right? Say, for example. Now, really expecting that it's not just going to be, say, a mention of the thing. It's not going to be an incident only. And it's also not going to be like a narrative which you have read in your periodicals and digests and novels and what we used to do in the 80s. Now we need to say something about it.
Yes, it has to be a more nuanced and a more complex
And
examination.
It has to be more
Yeah,
critical.
and the context is important. And, you know, the current context is important. But most of the time I just think that, you know, they'll pick up big, bold, burning topics, but somehow the narrative is just it just stops there.
Right.
I mean, an incident happens, it's a plot thing, and then you don't know like what the final takeaway would be. I had this play which was like a rehash of. There was a play with Sania Saeed and Salman Ahmed from Junoon. I don't know if you guys.
Salman Ahmed of Junoon?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, directed by Saira Kazmi, and if I'm not wrong, has to be Hasina Moin. So, well, it was funded by Johns Hopkins, and it was on population welfare and birth control and things like that. So they did a reboot of it, where it's like, 4 children, and then, the whole sass and the husband and the misogyny and all that. But then I was like, I'm only doing it because I need a new ending now. And so what's the ending? Because you should just kick the man and sit in a cab and go. Like, even if it's that. And the writer didn't...
doll's house of...
but the writer didn't give that to me, but then I changed it.
Good for you.
Right after the big forgive me, I'm having a nervous breakdown scene, I was like, she's like, okay, I forgive you, but I'll still...
Yeah, but you still
take
have
that,
to leave.
Yeah. I'll hail a cab, sit in the cab with my 4 girls, and go away. And,
And make a new
the cab goes into the horizon.
Bravo.
To the sunset.
No, but do you think that that's also, there is a dichotomy or a sort of gap now between what we are doing on TV or for television and what we are doing for film, which is not the same thing? Do you think that maybe this is the kind of narrative shift that I'm talking about is something that maybe is happening? So I'm determined to establish this. Do you think that kind of
I think what you're
difference in
referring to,
approach,
if I may,
yes,
is there does seem to be a new crop of people that are more interested in what Sarmad was talking about. If you're going to talk about a subject, then how to take a more critical angle with it, how to actually start a conversation about those issues. And they seem to be more in check and grounded with reality and how things actually are, as opposed to the slightly kind of dancing around the subject and not really get into the core of it, and also kind of melodramatic representations of these people that should be more have more depth, but are kind of two-dimensional. There's a sort of drawing away from that. But I also feel, I mean, you can't deny the fact that all of the media that we now consume informs us of this. It informs all of the people that are now thinking of those things in different ways. And so there's more of a global shift as opposed to an internal one.
Okay.
Right? So when you talk about like a move towards narrative, it's specific, I think, in that those narratives have existed, but now the depth is being added to them.
And do you think that there's more space to do it in a short film, for example, where one is less constrained by, let's say, production houses or money or other things that I think TV has to be more aware of?
I think every medium has its own challenges. In a short film, you are limited by time. You're also limited by resources because there's not a lot of money attached to them. But they're great in terms of, like a lot of precedents exist where filmmakers have made a short of a larger idea and then used that to find funding, distribution, etc. One example is Whiplash, if you've seen it, about that jazz drummer. Was made actually as a short sequence of that, that scene where he throws the chair at the drummer?
Yeah.
That was the short.
So, and that's taken from the short. Like they didn't reshoot it.
They didn't. No. They reshot everything because they changed the main boy.
Right,
the teacher is the same actor, and obviously the setting and everything. But they used that as the sort of
springboard.
Springboard, exactly. So shorts are kind of they exist in this limbo, which is non-commercial. But at the same time, it's kind of a proof of concept, or it can be something you want to explore, or it can be a way to build your chops. But the restrictions are that you can't be too ambitious. You can't be, you can't go beyond a certain time limit. And then also, shorts are a very specific medium that I feel are geared for festivals.
And I want to talk about festivals, and we're going to take a very quick break and come back to this wonderful conversation. Stay with us. Hi, Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're talking to filmmakers Jamal, Rehman and Sarmad Khoosat, who is also a man of many talents, and you know that he won the Pride of Performance in 2017. Should have asked you to wear your medal in come. It would have been very cool. Exactly. Like, shine it up. Like, yes.
COVID is bringing out a lot of interesting things, so I should start wearing my medal.
The nation is proud of you, Sarmad. Yes, you have a medal to prove it.
Yeah.
So we were talking about short films before the break, and Jamal, you were talking about how it has its own sort of challenges to it and its own kind of restrictions. But it's also, do you think, would it be fair to sort of call a short story like a short film, a short story, or a poem, and a film is like a novel?
I think structurally the core differences may not allow for that, because shorts have a lot more room in that the narrative doesn't necessarily have to flow a certain way, right?
Yes.
It can be a snippet of the story of a character that has no resolution, has no real backstory, and you kind of have to fill in the gaps. So I think you can take more liberties with whatever narrative you may have in a short film, where feature has more of a framework. Now, that's not to say that it's too rigid, but there is a sort of idea of how a story needs to flow that works. You know, that works in terms of engagement, it works in terms of the conflict of the characters, the stakes, and so on. You know, there's sort of factors to consider, and again, the rules that you can bend and break. But I think they apply more to features than they do to shorts.
Yeah.
You know. You wanted to say something?
Yes, you wanted to say something.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
I did. No, I just wanted to share my sort of sadness about the fact that there is such incredible work that's coming out of Pakistan too in short film formats, and but I just feel so sad that I wish there is like an effective distribution mechanism where, I don't know, online or wherever, festivals are great and festivals should happen. The whole spirit, the idea of festival is very important for the economics of the thing also. But I see these brilliant films made by, say, young grads, or like, say, somebody like Jamal or Saim, or a lot of other people. But then they should be made available somehow. I don't know, like, and in a lucrative way, not just like, and also I'm done with like just say short films or like just your passion things just being like people should not think of it as free stuff that they just somebody has put their time and money and heart and soul into it.
And there's already this sort of unfortunate cultural casualness to this, in any case, where creative endeavors are seen as free. They're seen as something that's easy. You just came up with the song, you made a song, you made a film.
Oh,
you
you're
just
so creative.
Yeah, exactly. You wrote a thing. Can you do it for free? Like, why? Then none of this is free. It has an incredible cost, and it might seem effortless, when talented people do it, but it is really disappointing. So, Sarmad, you mentioned.
I want to add to what Sarmad said. It's important that distribution is there, but it's also important that the support to actually make the work be present as well. And that is a big void that needs to be.
And somehow I do feel that Jamal, it would make a loop, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, I don't know, like there's so many talented people out there, and there are all sorts of entrepreneurs, and so I don't know. And just cutting into that sort of mainstream where, say, the Netflix and the Amazon and the Hulus of the world are, trust me, for us it's still like it's a very long walk
Yes.
to get there. So locally, definitely, because also short films are usually self-funded or not funded. People are just like putting whatever little shoestrings they have, and then they just make it happen, asking friends to act for them, spending, long time just writing and doing all of that. So I really wish, it's a great format. I've never made a short film. It's such a,
a dream.
Not a dream, but I find that it's such a freer kind of format as opposed to, I agree with Jamal that, it still gives you more room to just, just play around and be experimental. A feature comes with a lot of load and constraints and
expectations.
It's just a massive project.
Yeah, just the amount of money that goes into it, you have to recoup all of that.
Yeah, even if it is an indie film, as people
or an art
like to casually call it indie. Was there somebody asked
Anything
me?
that's different, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. It's artistic.
And half the time people don't even know, by the way, that where is it coming from?
Right.
Like this big joke around these awards that one of the TV channels organized in Dubai a few years ago, and Manto was nominated,
Yes.
Yeah.
and Shah was nominated, and then Manto won Best Independent Film or something. So Adnan Sarwar was he was like, it was funded by Jio. How does that? How is being an independent film? I was like, yeah, but Manika, do they even understand what they're saying? Manika, none of these films are made with that studio system behind them.
Absolutely.
And that's what the line was. Any film not made by a studio-backed thing was an independent film, right?
But we haven't, like,
Every
where are
film
the
is independent.
studios?
Yeah, all of our films are independent.
Basically,
mostly.
like, where do we have no studios left?
Adnan was pretty bummed by it, and I was like, I had nothing to do with it, trust me. And they also gave me Critics' Choice Acting Award. They would not give me the popular acting award.
Because you were
so
a
there
niche.
You go.
It was a niche. Only the
Parallel.
critics understood.
Parallel.
Trying to run parallel to the...
But we were talking about film festivals, and Sarmad, you said that it was economically also a really viable thing to do. And now, Elizabeth, your film, Jamal, has been shown at Top Shorts, and Zindagi Tamasha was shown at the Busan Film Festival, and it won the Kim Ji-seok Award also.
Kim Ji-suk Award.
Kim Ji-suk. So I will also
Yes,
say, so again, these are these wonderful films that are doing magnificently, clearly at international film festivals, which means that there is an audience out there who is responding to this content, but at the same time, it's a Western audience, and that distribution thing where back home, we don't get to see these things. So then, where are our festivals? Why don't we have any festivals? Give us a festival.
You know, when
So why are festivals important?
In my
I think?
previous career
Yes.
as a music producer, this is the question that I've been asking generally as well. Culturally, there seems to be this huge void where all of these opportunities don't exist for creatives in whatever field that may be. And that applies to art, it applies to film, it applies to music.
Yeah.
And you know, one of my main efforts was to somehow develop small platforms that can enable young musicians to express themselves, give them the resources to make the music, to distribute it, and so on. And I was doing that through True Brew.
Yep.
But it feels like such an uphill climb without larger support.
Yeah.
Because then it's just a pocket that's operating on its own independent way, parallel or whatever, right? Until the idea that art and culture needs to be promoted, needs to be encouraged, and is a crucial part of our society becomes the norm, this is not going to happen. So obviously people will start looking for opportunities
Of course,
abroad.
naturally.
So it's not that we want to make work for people outside of our country. It's that we don't really have any options. And how much work can one person do to develop platforms?
That's true.
Essentially the job of the government.
And films do require like an army to first produce a film, and then no matter what scale you are making a film on, it takes a lot of money. And you do need a market which is beyond, say, just your homegrown audience. And that is why India managed to become so big. And, you know, their outreach is definitely now global. And hence, they can do their mainstream things, and then they can produce a lunchbox also. And then they can really make this new wave kind of cinema, which is not essentially pandering to the presets, you know. Here the problem is, A, our market is really small.
Right.
Secondly, what I meant by the economic angle of festivals, when I traveled with Manto as a very naive, younger human, I figured that when you go to a festival, it's not that you're just taking your film in a bag and just, you know, just say, and just
loading the reel onto a projector.
looking your eyes big, wide open, and just, you know, I'm getting amazed by everything. You're there to meet people, right? It's a marketplace also. You pitch ideas to people, you find distributors there, and that's what the thing is meant to be. So that I understood with my whole Manto tour, and unfortunately the whole India-Pakistan thing just fell apart right after, you know, when the ban happened. But we opened the Kolkata Film Festival where, you know, it was like a huge deal, and I was like, if this happens, definitely we speak a similar language,
Yes.
or to a large degree, like Urdu is understood by a lot of Indians too. That market would have made our industry grow.
Yes,
You know,
quite right.
Because technically speaking, we have never released, officially released a film in India. Our channels are blocked there, other than, I don't know, perhaps a couple. So,
and there's always been an avid interest, cross-border interest, where
Absolutely.
they're watching our dramas, we're watching their dramas, we're watching their films, you know, they're singing our songs.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's so much there, and I think there's that sort of shared narrative.
And it needed to go beyond that, just say, like, just hiring individual talent, for
Yeah.
example, like a singer or an actor only. If it was to sort of become like an industry, it cannot be just restricted to just your Pakistan audience.
Yeah.
I mean, because then they are going to compare it to like a Nolan film, or at least, if not comparison for the sake of it, but just they know that there's a film which can be made on that scale too.
Yes.
So ours is always going to look small in some ways.
Quite right.
And their expectation would be that it should at least be at par with what, say, Bollywood is producing. So for that, you need more money, and for that, you need a bigger market.
And you need international recognition, and you need that
Absolutely.
kind of, you know, we've got Sharmeen Chinoy, who is now doing a Marvel film.
Yeah.
I'm so envious of you, Sharmeen.
But
really
also
happy for you.
very happy for you.
envious. Yeah. I hope I'm not showing my green envy.
Returning the color of my
That's my
goatee.
green envy.
No, but it's tremendous, because I think that's a really good example of what speaking to a wider audience can do, because clearly we are huge. There's so much talent there. And I think, how do you think that now, I think lots of thinking. We have film courses at universities now. BNU has one, NCA has one. And do you think that that's also, that's very promising? Do you think that those programs are now sort of training students who are interested to kind of think in the right ways and ask the right questions? Either of
I
you
think
can.
Sarmad should take this one.
Yes,
since he
yes.
has.
I think
Yeah,
it's
you're like
absolutely-
teaching as well.
I mean, I'm a fan of like structured coaching,
Yeah.
and you know, how can you not think of this huge history and legacy that cinema globally and locally has, not be looked at as constructs of history
Yes.
and records of politics, and you know, stories told through pop culture and how it has evolved, devolved, the caricature of it even, you know, like all of that. So, I mean, it's so unbelievable on so many levels that, you know, we weren't teaching cinema, we weren't teaching film until, I mean, I graduated in 2001, and there was no sign of even like a minor subject which was remotely
One
connected
course.
to film or TV even.
Even a workshop on the
Yeah.
side somewhere. Yeah. Same.
They would have radio training, and they would have some kind of a course on theater, and in theater only like through reading like a play as text or whatever.
Or you're doing the school play.
So I think it's extremely positive and in the right direction by all means. I mean, how can you not expect that training would matter, training would make it
Yes.
better, training would help people look at it differently, you know? And it's not just going to be, say, way basking in the glorious past and
Yes.
thinking that that's where it ends. No, it's evolving every day.
And like what you said sort of right in the beginning is that I imagine it's also that you're wasting less time also.
Absolutely.
Because you are being guided and mentored
Absolutely.
and steered, and you're able to kind of come to where you need to be quicker and more efficiently.
Absolutely.
And when you study in a school, I mean, also this is like such a teamwork thing. You need to meet people. You need to find the right kind of people. Your key collaborators, there's so many on a film set.
Absolutely.
From your director of photography to your editors to your writers. So that's where you will find people. So just that environment is important, I feel that, and we are so late. Like we are about 70 years late, but and we are 73.
So you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree, because also it's such a technical field. You know, there's and there's also so many moving parts.
Right.
You know, going to film school puts you into a community of people that are also learning the same things you are. You crew for them, they crew for you. You move around in different roles. You kind of get a larger understanding of the mechanics of filmmaking. It offers you the opportunity because it gives you resources to make those films. You know,
Also very
cameras
important.
they're much cheaper now, but they're still expensive.
Yeah.
and even things like lights and sets and spaces and so on. All of those opportunities come together to give you an experience that when you come through it, you have the technical and the creative capability to then go and perform.
Yeah, and then I imagine that we're going to take a very quick break and then continue this conversation. I had a point, but I will make it in like 2 minutes. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We've been having a really interesting conversation about filmmaking and creative expression with Sarmad Khoosat and Jamal Rehman. So before the break, we were talking about how a structured environment in which to actually learn the craft of filmmaking is very important. And it's sort of not to be sneezed at, and it should be taken seriously. And we were talking about this in the break, that Sarmad, you see so much potential in your students, and you feel like there's a lot of sort of good ideas fermenting there.
Yeah, and not just my students, it's people in general,
and
like
people you interact with.
Film grads and people who are really like, say, investing their educational careers into it.
Yeah.
I did this project for Kush called Aakhri Station a few years ago. It was a field trip with just fresh grads and me, all of them. The entire crew.
Wow.
Yeah, from the ADs to the editor to the cinematographers to the, the script supervisor, everybody, costume and art and everything. So I had a great time,
and it was so beautifully done.
Right, and it wasn't me, right? It was that energy that collectively these young, fresh graduates, these kids brought to it. Zindagi Tamasha, my DOP is a slightly older grad from NCA. My writer was a fresh grad, is a fresh grad from NCA. My crew again had a lot of young kids. On Kamli, which is the recent feature, my DOP is, I think he's from the class of 2017, NCA.
Which is like literally yesterday.
Yesterday. So is my writer. When we're talking about short films, even the main idea of the film is based on a short film made by a grad. And I bought the rights to that short film because I loved it so much. And then we expanded into a... I'm just saying, so that is how you will now somehow at least aim to be at par with the diversity that international cinema offers. Here, we've just made it so commerce-bound and made it so myopic also, where you would just stick to one genre.
Yeah.
If you have the Robin Hood thing going on, then it is Sultan Rai Saab and Anjuman Ji, just making that for all of their life.
Yeah.
And then you have the formula that, say, Shan had or whatever. So I just felt that, sure, I mean, even if it sounds mean and a little harsh, I don't think that there was a diversity.
Yeah.
Creativity-wise.
Yes.
I don't know. If you were to ask me if I have 5 favorite Pakistani films, I don't. We never, cultivated that culture that you need to, say, somehow consume it also, or just say, go watch it. Even
and I
be
think
invested in it.
invested in it. We never were, unfortunately.
And I don't think we ever really took it seriously either. Like, you wouldn't in earnest say that, well, you know, that ex-Sultan Rahi film was
So I feel this is probably this decade, or I don't know, just the last few years is where I feel hopeful that now, I mean, these newer beings with their kind of, you know, spark and ideas should at least make it diverse. Let's not make promises how great or big or grand it would be, but at least, you know, these people are a little more aware and a little more exposed to the variety that cinema can offer.
But also, you know, it adds to the number of works out there.
Yes.
And we've had such a small number in the last, well, during my lifetime mostly. And now that more and more practitioners are coming into it, trained practitioners are coming into it, you will find people exploring new themes and new ideas. And we talked about the culture of being invested emotionally in cinema at large. That requires momentum, it requires time, it requires a body of work that the country produces. And then people start to gravitate towards it. How many screens do we have? I think we've lost several this last year.
Yeah, I think in total, there are not more than about 70 or 80 in Pakistan, which is a very small number. Which is a very small number.
So we're talking about cinemas.
I think it reached about 100 or so, and then they had to downsize. So, you know, it's like one step forward or 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's kind of, it's slow to build.
And also we've made it into a very urban thing now, like just the urban capital thing. And in the past, I mean, the main business or the money used to come from the smaller cities also.
Right.
Because they do not have a lot of opportunities. I mean, they don't even have, say, enough restaurants to go out or...
And as a medium, film is so egalitarian because everybody can understand it. You don't have to have any special skills to access what you're seeing.
I mean, and it was, I think, only in the 70s and 80s, my father tells me that, you know, there were touring talkies. People would have these pop-up cinemas in little villages or like, say, slightly more... you know, like the smaller cities, so to say, in size or developed
towns.
And so I think all of that is gone. It's also have become like just an affair that is restricted to a mall's top floor.
Yes.
You know, which in itself is, I don't know. I mean,
Kind of
it's
rarefying the experience a little too much.
Well, that's something that PNCA can pick up. I think that would be a really phenomenal idea if they start to introduce these pop-up cinemas in rural areas. That would really...
That's what my idea with Zindagi Tamasha was.
Yes.
I just thought that, okay, it's a smaller film. I made it in Punjabi. It's loaded with, you know, the region's flavor so much that I thought even if once the run is over and just the luxury that I had money and it's my film, so whatever money we make in the theater, but before my digital release, I really thought, but lo and behold,
Well,
what dreams.
The country had other plans.
No, but again, I think this is where the support that you were talking about really comes in, and I think that that's also where an audience also plays a role. So if you have an audience that is sort of, you train an audience and you kind of you bring them a level of sophistication that they can then rise to. Because I don't believe in dumbing down things for audiences. So for example, like I don't think that it's fair to an audience to keep giving them the same formula. Just because it works doesn't mean that we can't handle something better than that.
Absolutely.
Or the way that our dramas have kind of devolved, I feel. Like in the 80s, they were like at a certain level, and now it's all about sort of being, you know, domestic violence and weeping women and just, you know.
But I do feel that, you know, alongside, there are these scary big numbers which just validate or sort of, you know, they counter what you are saying. Like, you know, when they tell me that, no, this is the kind of mood that we have for this quarter and this is the kind of play that I should be doing. I whatever you said, it doesn't look evolved. It looks like the most replete thing that you could be doing. But then you find out that there are, and these numbers are big. And numbers have become so important now. Like everything has become like really like a math thing.
Algorithms
and whatnot, right? I've heard that people are now cast in dramas and things based on their social media, whatever, followers and people who, what do they do? Like
followers.
Clout. The word is clout.
Yeah. So, right.
No, but that's kind of horrifying because you should be cast on your talent and how suitable you are for a role.
Likewise, I mean, I would like to believe like even at the moment in cinema, center stage is still not ours. It's not ours. And by ours, I mean people that, you know, I would feel that...
It's art cinema.
Yeah, and not just art. I mean, I'm just saying just a little more brave. Brave in terms of, oh, it can't be just a comedy. Everybody can't be making a comedy.
No.
Like, that's all they want. Like, every time I have been offered a film where I would be like, oh, big money, not independent and some, you know, but no, it has to be a comedy. And my problem is, I do not mind comedy, but...
It can't be everything.
Everything, and also not the same kind of comedy. Like it just has to be a bunch of boys and girls and doing silly things, and also like not the right age. Also, like
that's true. Like there are only so many college people
who shouldn't be doing those things.
There are so many older people who can masquerade as college students,
and they could do great comedy. Like if it was written for them. It's really like you have this formula which is also borrowed from the 80s, Bollywood 80s. And you just wanted to...
But is this also... I feel like we don't really talk about writing either. Like screenwriting is also really important. And do you think that if somebody were to...
Yeah, absolutely.
It's everything.
It's everything,
No, but I'm saying this, if you were to write something that was really kind of fresh and inventive, would it increase the likelihood of it being made, turning into an actual think.
Well, okay, I think we need to backtrack a bit and consider what Sarmad said, the idea of boldness. And I think there is a culture of risk aversion in the creative field. And that applies to advertising, it applies to film, it applies to pretty much everything. And the idea of nostalgia that you also said, oh, this is something that worked in the 80s, let's rehash it. That has to go away. We have to put more faith in our creatives and let them try new things before any of the stuff that we're talking about can happen. And yes, of course, it starts with the screenplay. It starts with what you're writing and the stories you're talking about. And that also brings me to another point. Like we're talking about dissemination in rural areas. And the idea that it kind of supersedes any cultural, economic barriers. What we're talking about is stories. And South Asia specifically is a gold mine of stories. And this is how, it's such an ingrained part of our culture to have all of this learning through storytelling.
Yes, absolutely.
And so essentially, if you are talking about writing good stories, in whatever that may mean, they will talk to all kinds of people, right? So yes, if you can manage that quality, yes, immediately you're able to talk to pretty much everyone in the country.
You'll have a response.
You have a response, you have an engagement, and then you build on that culture and the momentum and so on, everything we've spoken about. But it all boils down to this idea of risk aversion. We need to be forward thinking as opposed to backward thinking. You know, we're still, all our corporate music shows are still doing covers of songs from the 90s. Our concepts are all based from, 20 years ago or whatever. We need to think forward, not backward. We need to think of new ideas, things that haven't been explored. And there's so much going on in even just contemporary Pakistan. With our youth, with our middle-aged people, with our urban people, with our rural people. You also used an interesting term, the poverty porn. A lot of it has kind of gone towards, oh, look how bad things are for us. But there's also good things that are happening in the country. There are also, and this is not to sort of say that we should consider the soft image or whatever, but we have a slew of stories across many different kinds of emotions and circumstances and people. And none of those are being explored. Because it's just,
we're just falling back into the rut again and again.
We keep going back to what was trendy then and was successful then. Let's try and get that success by utilizing nostalgia. It's a quick fix, and it tends to lose a larger, longer-term sight of how we're depriving ourselves from cultural growth.
And I feel like for that to happen, institutional support is then very important. And that means grants and government support and, institutions teaching courses and producers investing in that. And, like big companies who are putting money into these cultural projects need to kind of be thinking about
big companies also, by the way, all of them are very uncreative.
I
just want
Absolutely. The bigger the company, in fact, the less creative.
Really, where you
like
feel
we can do
that
better than this.
I'm sure Jamal has had his experiences working with the biggies, and so have I. But the number of people that would be involved in a smallish project or the kind of analysis that you would be subjected to, you really expect that something wonderful would come out of it. But no, they're also stuck about somewhere, I don't know, about 2.5 decades ago.
Oh gosh.
Things are like...
So it's like all of this wonderfulness is just waiting to be given voice.
Somehow everybody just, and not that, it's coming from a place where I think I do not have anything to do with it. I am responsible for it by, say, just being a part of the big setup. But everybody seems to be so happy marinating in there. For the lack of a better word, mediocrity, and that's what it is,
They feel it isn't broke, so they don't need to fix it.
So they just like that, and
it is broke.
It is broke.
But you see, like TV dramas are doing the same thing because it's still pulling in advertisers, it's still pulling in
those numbers are still happening.
Numbers are still happening.
People, really. I mean, they watch those dramas and everything. They love them also, and not just those phantom things that were recording TRPs with your cable networks. Now it's out there on YouTube and whatnot, and like these shows that you would find a million flaws with in those 38 minutes of an episode, but just check it out in 2 hours once it's uploaded, and it is Like 2 million, 3 million is
Like easy.
no
Yeah.
big
But then you
deal
also have
anymore.
audiences that are watching Netflix shows, and they're watching Turkish soaps, and they're watching that kind of content also. So I feel like maybe it's small. It's not as flexible as I think it
Netflix
is.
is a very
Yeah,
small
Very
that's-
portion.
small
Yeah.
portion, really. Like I've
But
been
like
working
Turkish soaps, dubbed Turkish soaps.
dubbed Turkish soaps, yes, but like these people that this streaming platform from India,
Yes.
which is getting some stuff
Yes,
from
yes.
people here. So according to them, I was having this discussion, and says even in India, I think Netflix is about 6 lakh subscribers, official.
Right.
Like India, which is huge, right? Just imagine, I don't know how many would we have here.
Yeah.
So it's a really small number.
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah, so do you think in a way it's like because we don't have a very defined mainstream cinema culture, so then we don't have an alternative one either because it's both just two
They are
tiny
tied to
little
each other,
things.
yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I
Right
don't
now
want to sound
it's
like a
just-
pessimist, but I do feel that people who are at least putting their bucks into the thing, they really know what mainstream is or should be like. I mean, since films are not being made in that quantity, we don't get to. But out of 10, I'm sure 8 would fall in that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But what's promising is that I think we are moving in some hopeful direction, and all these sort of younger people who are now thinking
peripheries and margins
brewing
are
out these
kind of-
ideas. And I think like the internet has probably also helped because it's easier to put your work out there and have trailers or I don't know.
But that's a sort of double-edged sword
Yeah.
because it does give you distribution, but it also devalues your work because you're giving it away for
Because it's
free.
everywhere.
The economics of it are completely messed up.
This is like a conversation that I could keep having, but unfortunately, TikTok. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on the
Thanks so
show.
much.
I think this is a really important and complex conversation, and we might keep having it on another show. Thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on the coffee table. Bye now.